Well, it's very appropriate that our scriptures tonight talked about transformation and talked about serving. This is Mission Ministries weekend, and we're going to have the opportunity over the course of all four worship services this weekend to hear personal stories from people who have either gone through transformation themselves or seen transformation through their involvement with our mission ministries, through serving others. As many of you know, Glenmar is a church that is very committed to social justice. So here to talk about Glenmar's involvement with PATH, which is a social justice ministry, is John Barnes.
Good afternoon, Glenmar. My name is John Barnes. I'm a refugee from the 11 o'clock service, and thank you so much for welcoming me here today. So DC just mentioned that, as everyone here knows, the mission of Glenmar is to be praising God, growing disciples, and serving others. And why is it that we want to grow disciples? The reason is it's for the transformation of the world. We want to bring change. People Acting Together in Howard County is an organization that works to bring together faith communities and other institutions into a common voice that speaks out within the community for the disadvantaged, the marginalized, those people that need some extra help. It's a multiracial, multi-faith, nonpartisan organization. And we join together in 20-plus organizations that together total more than 20,000 people acting in Howard County. So when we bring our voices together, when we can find a common cause to come together and join in and speak as one voice, we really can move the county and have some impact. PATH brings people together, and it brings people together and challenges them to imagine change. To imagine what it is that we might accomplish if we all come together and work together on a problem that we see. We can then bring resources together, and by combining resources, we can expand our power and impact. In the past, PATH has helped organize people to identify and work on gaps in healthcare, for example, especially those that are vulnerable. And PATH works to improve access to healthcare by promoting healthy lifestyles, building strong community partnerships for health, and by providing care coordination to ensure that marginal, needy people do not fall through the cracks in our healthcare system. As a result of PATH plus some other people coming together, we now have a program called Healthy Howard. Has anybody ever heard of Healthy Howard? So yes, PATH and other organizations, we can have an effect on what's going on in the county when we come together. PATH worked to establish the READY program, which some of you may have heard of. The READY program provides environmental jobs for youth and young adults. And some of our very own Glenmar youth have taken advantage of that great opportunity in the READY program. PATH in the past has worked on identifying more affordable housing opportunities during the replanning of the Columbia downtown area. And some of you may remember that Pastor Matt a few years ago got involved in that effort and was one of the voices in that effort. Again, PATH and some other organizations came together working on that. And we've also worked on improvements to the rapid transit system. One of the problems in Howard County is it's hard to get around unless you have access to a car, transportation, and that kind of thing. In our rapid transit system, we do have a bus system, but let me tell you, it does not work very well. My grandson's girlfriend was going to Howard Community College, and it was taking her an hour and a half to go 4 miles to Howard Community College. She could walk it quicker, she could get there by bus. As you can see, PATH has been involved in a wide-ranging, diverse issues that affect the quality of life for all of us in Howard County. As another example, I know how much of us love school cafeteria lunches, right? Does everybody love those? Last year, at the beginning of the school year, I went to an event at Bellows Springs Elementary School where they were rolling out in all of the schools a new program for healthy lunches in the schools. I think everybody's aware that there's a movement effect to lessen the amount of fatty foods that our kids eat, fatty snacks and sugary snacks. We do have a problem with obesity and other things. So PATH and some others lobbied to get healthier lunches in the schools. And the schools over the last 3 years have totally revamped their lunch programs. I'm not convinced that the food's any better, but they have access to fresh vegetables and fresh salads and things that they did not have access to before. So if we parents bring our kids up the right way, and they'll eat the right things, hopefully. So in conclusion, I just want to let you know that the PATH mission is just one of many, many missions that Glenmar gets involved in. If you're more interested in getting involved in something like PATH, where we go out and advocate for change in the county and work with the county to make changes, you can see either me, John Barnes, or Dale Bucks, and we'll get you pointed in the right direction. Again, we're just here to serve. This is what Jesus has taught us to do, right? To serve the last, the lost, and the least. And this is the least that we can do to reach out and help them. Thank you.
In Baltimore doing urban ministry, and one of the participants this summer for the first time was Lena Osborne, and she's here to share her experience.
Hello. Oh, that's loud. Okay. Hello. I'm Lena Osborne, and I'm in 8th grade, and I'm in this year's confirmation class. This past summer, I had the amazing opportunity of going on the Baltimore mission trip, like DC said, and I was really excited to go on it because I had heard other people talk about it, and it sounded really fun, and I wanted to help people. When people were talking about it, they always talked about these huge changes in their lives, and I kind of thought to myself that they were kind of overreacting, and it was probably not that big, but it really is unbelievable. When you're a person, especially a teenager, it's really easy to get caught up in your own personal struggles. I think that before the mission trip, I had a really hard time understanding that other people had lives a lot harder than mine is. When we were on the mission trip, on the first day, we went to a soup kitchen called Our Daily Bread, and it's really cool. But at Our Daily Bread, it was really interesting because there was people telling their stories to each other like they were best friends. And I guess it became overwhelmingly apparent to me that these people had had lives and childhoods and emotions just like I have, but their life is so vastly different from mine and so much harder. On the second day, we went to Little Flowers, which is a daycare for kids in a rough area of Baltimore. And these kids were about the same age as the ones that I babysit in my neighborhood. And it was crazy to think that their lives are going to be filled with so much more opposition and that they were going to be so much harder. And I think the biggest moment for me was when we were talking to these amazing women who run this school for kids in Sandtown. And they were talking about the stories that the kids deal with. And it's really difficult to believe that people grow up without a strong support system like I have. They're often in situations where parents are just not able to be there for them. And kids don't know where or when they'll be fed. And kids are in schools where their teachers can't support them, and overall they just have nobody. And I realized how lucky I was that I have 2 wonderful parents in a supportive school and a really great church community, and that both my parents work flexible enough jobs to drive me a bunch of random places. I feel like somehow nowadays it's much easier to take a step back and realize that what I'm dealing with isn't that bad, and that in the long run I'm so unbelievably lucky and blessed. It's easy to think sometimes, why are these things happening to me, and why is God letting these things happen to me? But in reality, He's given us much more than we really need or deserve. God has given me so much more than I can imagine, and I think that He's given us the obligation to help those who don't have that. I think that as much of you as you can should sign up to go on a mission trip, and if that's too much of an obligation, you can sign up for any of the other amazing mission ministries that we have here, because everything's a really, really good experience. Thank you.
Even teenagers, just so we know that teenagers are people too. It's on now. Well, good evening. I am excited to be here. This is the third annual Mission Ministries weekend at Glenmar. If you are unfamiliar with United Methodist doctrine, it's a well-established policy that once something occurs 3 years in a row, then we have always done it that way. So now it's an inviolable tradition, so you can look forward to hearing about our Serving the World ministries on World Communion Sunday for at least the next decade or so, I'm guessing. Now, speaking of doctrines, since this is Mission Ministries Weekend, I thought I'd take a moment to discuss what the official mission of the church is according to the United Methodist Book of Discipline. Now, John kind of stole a little bit of my thunder here. Now, I did share with Pastor Mandy that I planned on speaking briefly at each of the services this weekend, and I asked her if she had any advice for me. She just said to trust in the Holy Spirit and that everything would turn out fine, but that whatever I did, don't talk about church doctrines. She says that sometimes they're hard to describe, and they can often be considered boring. So, of course, I'm going to immediately abandon her advice. The mission of the church, according to the Book of Discipline, is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. Make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. Well, that sounds about right, and maybe more than a little familiar. You know, Glenmar's mission statement is praising God, growing disciples, serving the world. So that whole disciples and world thing show up in both descriptions. Now, if you're like me, and I know I am, then you might be thinking to yourself that it's probably not a coincidence that Glenmar's mission statement is so close to the mission of the United Methodist Church. Of course, Glenmar also has the vision statement that we are a church that seeks to root people into the life-giving message of Jesus Christ. Well, several years ago, we had a number of smart people get together to decide how a church that wants to root people into the life-giving message of Jesus Christ would go about doing that. How do we make disciples for the transformation of the world? How do we praise, grow, and serve? And out of that process came the creation of the discipleship pathway. Now, many of you are at least passingly familiar with the term discipleship pathway, or the diagram of it. The discipleship pathway holds forth the conviction that there are at least 6 broad areas that each of us can grow in our discipleship to help transform the world. Now, these broad areas include spiritual growth, which is intentionally working on our knowledge of God's will for our lives through Bible study, prayer, devotions, fasting, or other spiritual disciplines. Worship, which is praising God in word and song, either in a group or individually. Christian relationship, which is intentionally spending time with a small group of fellow believers for study or fellowship or accountability. Generosity, sharing to support God's work with all of our resources, including time, talents, and treasure. Witness, which would be sharing with others the good works that we have seen God do in our lives. And then service, which are actions that serve to benefit other individuals or groups. Now, just for purpose of my sharing today, I want to make mission and service synonymous with each other. Now, people can enter the discipleship pathway through any of the 6 areas, and they can be at different levels in their maturity in different areas at the same time. Some people may have a really good understanding of the value of worship, and yet not really understand the value of generosity. Someone else may really enjoy being in a small group and gain the benefits of active participation, but be totally uncomfortable with the thought of sharing their faith or God experiences with others. Progress on the discipleship pathway is almost never linear, and it's common to have as many backward steps as forward ones. Now, this is bad preaching, so I just ask you to bear with me for a moment while I make a seemingly non sequitur jump in my message. I'd like to briefly talk about the idea of gateway drugs. This is a concept that suggests that early experimentation with alcohol or tobacco or prescription drugs can escalate to more addictive illicit drugs later in life. Of course, we should remember that caffeine is a drug as well. You know, some people start out drinking coffee and evolve to drinking espresso, then Red Bull or Monster or Rockstar. I myself I must confess that I'm susceptible to the fried dough gateway drugs. A donut hole or two on a Sunday morning can easily lead to me eating entire donuts or bear claws or apple fritters later in the week. Now, today, I would like to offer the suggestion that not all gateway drugs are potentially bad, because I think that mission and service are the gateway drugs of the discipleship pathway. In some ways, service is often the easiest first step onto the pathway. Realistically, nobody wants to move outside of their comfort zone to participate in any area of the pathway that is new to them. But by dipping a toe into mission, you are making it easier to connect with every other area of the discipleship pathway. While some people have a natural inclination to help others through service or mission, most of us need a little encouragement from a familiar face to get involved in something new. It is often an invitation from a friend to join them in service, or after we hear of someone else's experience with a particular mission ministry that inspires us to try something new. And the reality is that when we become involved in service, we are exposed to and frequently have the chance to be personally involved with spiritual growth, worship, Christian relationship, generosity, and witness. We experience spiritual growth through service because virtually every mission trip at Glenmar, every mission ministry at Glenmar, is undergirded by prayer. Prayer for the participants, prayer for the recipients, prayer by the congregation supporting all of our mission outreach projects. Some ministries have emerged out of an individual or group's response to their understanding of what God calls us to do in the Bible. Mission trip participants share group devotions twice a day wherever we serve. And for over 15 years, our youth have gained an understanding of service by fasting through their involvement with a 30-hour famine. As for worship, well, a lot of people think that worship takes place only on Saturday evening or Sunday morning inside the walls of this building. It's important to note that on many of our mission trips, we worship with local congregations, or we worship of our own design. And the day of service each year draws many hundreds of volunteers of all ages, races, and religions to one location here at Glenmar, where we are united in a common desire to serve the world. Seeing hundreds of volunteers pack hundreds of thousands of meals is an act of worship. Christian relationship is a wonderful side effect of involvement in service. Whether it's being part of a small group work crew on a mission trip, or consistently seeing the same group of volunteers when you work with Habitat for Humanity, or serve meals at the Day Resource Center, or tutor with college and career prep, the opportunity to draw closer in relationship with fellow believers is always present. And then there's generosity. Service and mission just seems to draw the best out of people. Let me tell you about the person who is standing in line at the gift card table after worship, and here's the person in front of them saying that they are buying cards for the first time in order to start saving for their child's mission trip that summer. The person who overheard that conversation pulled me aside and talked to me, and then donated some of the proceeds from their own gift card family account to pay for that child's trip. Let me tell you about the day this summer when the water main supplying Glenmar broke and the church had to be shut down in the middle of the day. No big deal, except that this was during the Baltimore Mission Camp week, and we were supposed to feed 40 people that night right here at the church. Well, one family with children participating in the mission camp volunteered the use of their home to feed all 40 of us. Even crazier, another couple that had no connection whatsoever with the Baltimore experience heard about the church being closed and reached out to me and offered me the use of their home to feed our group that night. Let me tell you about the people who walk up to me and give me checks and say, use this to help someone go on a mission trip. Let me tell you about the people who take stars to provide gifts for children at Christmas, the people who bring grocery bags of food to the church multiple times a year, the people who regularly drop off donations for grassroots. Let me tell you about the people that organize jewelry sales, 5K runs, silent auctions, and golf tournaments to raise money for organizations in Howard County that help the least, the last, and the lost. Let me tell you about people who eat chili, pancakes, or spaghetti for mission causes. I have lots of stories of generosity, but I suffer from the constraints of the time here in worship. Service encourages generosity, and Glenmar, let me tell you, you are an incredibly generous congregation. Of all the sections in the discipleship pathway, I think the area the most people struggle with is witness. We somehow conflate witness with the need to knock on people's doors and ask, if you died tonight, would you go to heaven? Or maybe we have a vision of passing out gospel tracts on street corners. Witness is simply sharing with others the wonderful ways you've seen God work in your life or in the lives of others. At the end of each day on every mission trip, we gather the group together in a circle, and we take time to share things that we're thankful for or ways we saw God at work during the day. At the beginning of the week, the sharing is maybe a little shallow, a little superficial. But as the week goes on and people start paying more attention to seeing God at work, the sharing gets deeper and more profound. This weekend, we have 9 different people sharing about how at least half a dozen ministries have transformed their lives or the lives of others. And that brings us full circle back to service. The beautiful thing is that we don't have to travel long distances or for extended periods of time to gain the benefits that come from service. Yes, I recognize that I'm probably known as the mission trip guy here at Glenmar, and I do have a special love for serving others through mission trips. But I'm equally in love with how we serve our neighbors right here in Ellicott City, Columbia, Baltimore, and other nearby locations. We tend to think of the mission field as a far-off place and missionaries as people who have a special calling to go there. Well, I want you to make sure you look at the sign when you leave the church parking lot this evening before you turn onto New Cut Road. It says Servants Entrance. It's our job, our calling, and our blessing to be in mission right where you are every day. I'd like to end our time together by sharing a short video clip.